first we want to say, listen to your conversation, and we can't find an answer unless you present the question. The question just remains really active in you for year after year after year after year, then your experience remains a response to the question that's asked. So you have to find a way of moving off the problem, and that's what the unconditional part will do. Can you feel how that all fits together? So you just described a condition that you keep active because you keep observing it. It's like a vicious cycle. It's true. Are you asking me to not notice something that is true? Yes. We're asking you to take your attention off true things that you don't want to keep making true in your experience. Because you observe it, and then you offer the vibration of it, and then of course the universe will deliver it to you over and over and over again. So you tell us again, succinctly, the condition that needs to change so that you can feel love. I need to find my true love in order to what? So are you saying to us that a condition needs to change? There needs to be somebody there that is that object of your attention to which you feel that love before you can feel that love. You can't get there from there because the vibration that you've got going on is preventing you from getting there. So you have to shift something. So if the condition is, you need to be there so that I can love you, and since you're not there, I can't love you. Once the condition shifts, then I will have a response to the condition. Isn't that what you're saying? You don't want it to be what you're saying, but it is really obvious that it's what you're saying. I need this condition to be different so that I can have a different conditional response to it. Because the universe doesn't hear what you say, the universe hears what you mean. I need this to be different so that I can feel different about it. That's what you're saying. Since that doesn't work, then is it possible for you to feel the way you want to feel before the person shows up? So let's focus on the love that you want to feel for someone. So just use some words. What does it feel like? What does that love feel like? It feels a bit like security. It feels like appreciation. It feels like appreciating. It feels like being appreciated. It feels like stability. It feels like respect. It feels like fun. It feels like spontaneity. It feels like cleverness. It feels like humor. It feels like life. It feels like zest. It feels sensual. It feels like being alive. It feels like eagerness.
Good morning, Abraham. That's better. Excellent. So, as a health practitioner, I'm starting to observe as I work with more and more people that emotions really play the biggest part in their healing process.
Emotions don't play the biggest part, except that they are indicators of what does play the biggest part.
Right. So, trying to get beyond the what's going on to the why's going on, from a more quantum vibrational frequency, and I'm just noticing that more and more the physical dense remedies and stuff that I work with are becoming obsolete, so to speak. And so as you're a professional in this profession, and you're moving forward, and you're making these observations, and you're continuing to work with people, and yet the powers that be are negating what?
The powers that be that you are speaking of are irrelevant.
Okay.
The powers that be are held within the individual.
Right.
And that's what we were just talking about here today. The only power that bees that matters at all is the power to align with the fullness of who you are. And when you do, you thrive.
Right. So
those other powers that bees are powers that want to be.
Right. So moving beyond the FDA and the FTC.
So from this point forward, let's call them the powers that want to be.
Okay. Excellent. Right.
The wannabe powers. The wannabe. Right. The wannabes. The wannabe. Seriously, we're not pushing against them. We're wanting to help you to dissolve your resistance about them because they hold no power. They're not holding you apart from anything that you want to accomplish with any of the people who come to you for remedy.
Right.
Those powers that be have no power.
Okay.
Your client, your patient, your person who has come to you holds all of the power, 100% of it, and you know how to unlock it.
Right. So as a practitioner, being able to see energy since I was a very small child. It's more about the energy that I see, kind of like when you're calling people up, and bringing that more and more to the forefront in the practice and the work that I do, and more of the intuitive information that comes through, and kind of stepping my ego out of the way and just let the information come to me.
Well, before you go further, we want to hear you further and fully, but we want to stick something in here that will give us a good basis for what comes next. So, if a person is vibrationally out of whack, and that's really what illness is.
That's what I see.
They're vibrationally out of whack. Life has caused them to ask for more than they are allowing, and they've got a tension, a vibrational tension within them that is evidenced in two ways. The first way is they're sick. Well, that was actually the second way. Showed up second. The first indication was the vibrational indicator of emotion. So if they have stress or frustration or anger or angst, and they don't address it and do something to change the focus that softens that, if they live in the real world with the wannabe powers that surround them, what often they do is they just put up with the tension. They deal with it. They stuff it. They accept it as reality. And so they become immune to it in the same way that they're becoming immune to many of the medicines that are being offered. They are also immune to their emotional guidance system that is letting them know that there is an attitudinal adjustment that could be helpful. So those are the two primary ways. Now you are indicating, oh, but there's a third way. I can see their energy. And we say, yes, but just as they know they've got negative emotion and they know that they're sick and you can see the condition of their energy, all of those indicators after the fact are just indicators that help you to understand why you're not thriving. But the what to do about it is much better applied before the manifestation than after the manifestation.
Right.
So the thing that's tricky for you is that if you are interacting with people who come to you after the manifestation, so all the indicators are there. They've got a sickness, check that off the list. They've got negative emotion, which is compounded because they're sick, check that off the list. And their energy looks terrible as you view it, check that off the list. And we say, so what do we have? Well, we've got a sick person on our hands, don't we? But when you say you want to talk about it deeper, we want to talk about it in terms of energy and in terms of energy only. We don't want to talk about the symptoms of the energy. So it doesn't matter what the sickness is, how severe it is, how high or low it is on the death chart that has been, in other words, the mortality chart. How sick are you? Are you going to die? Yes, for sure, you are.
Right.
You're going to have a croaking experience. The question is, can you gain your vibrational balance? That's the only question. Can you gain your vibrational balance? And talking about the illness, diagnosing the illness, looking at the illness, probing around at the illness, making notes about the illness, anything that has to do with the illness is counterproductive. And in like manner, anything that has to do with acknowledging the emotion is counterproductive too, in the sense that saying to someone, hey, you've got a bad attitude, is no more helpful than saying, hey, I can tell by this diagnosis of tests that you have an illness. What you want to say to them is, you are a vibrational being who has the ability to bring your vibration back into alignment, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And everything else will fall into place. These three indicators that I'm aware of, which is the color of your aura, which is the tenor of your emotion, you cranky one, and the diagnosis on my medical chart, all of these things are only indicators of that. And that is what I want to talk about, you say to them. I want to talk about vibration, period.
Right.
And until scientists and doctors and physicians and anyone who cares about their physical apparatus at all, until you accept that you're a vibrational being, period, a vibrational being who has physical ramifications of your vibration, period. And until you are willing to accept that, then you are on a wild ride.
Right.
Because when you turn on the television, they will throw at you in an evening of watching television so many remedies that have little or nothing to do with you that your head will begin to spin.
Right. So, being in this profession, coming up with a strategy that's leading edge and moving forward and can be a greater assistance to the folks that I work with. What's a good strategy for that?
Well,
because I tend to, I'm really seeing myself really move away from the more gross physical matter kind of things and help my clients to really understand just what you just said about vibration and starting at that, have that be the starting point as opposed to living a diagnosis instead of living your experience.
The thing that's interesting is that with anyone that you're interacting with, there's the interaction between the two of you going on. But there's a more important interaction going on, and that's the interaction between them and their inner being. That's the interaction between them and who they really are and what they really want and how well they really are. So as a facilitator, your work, your only work that is of real value to your patient is to acknowledge that relationship between them and to let everything you utter be about soothing that. About soothing that. That's all. So you could start out, and also, we understand that you're dealing with a lot of people that are not necessarily ready to acknowledge themselves as vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe. They want to talk about the physicality of it. So you can break it down in a physical way by talking about it from an emotional standpoint rather than from a vibrational standpoint. You can really build that bridge in a powerful way. But we would, if we were addressing someone and we were seeing them for the first time, we would say, tell me, speaking from your point of view, tell me how you feel.
Right.
And as they start describing physical symptoms, we would interrupt them pretty soon, within 30 seconds of them beginning to describe what hurts or what isn't functioning right. And we would say, let me clarify. I mean, how do you feel? And they would go on to tell you that the toe is throbbing or whatever is going on physically, and then listen briefly again and say, wait, let me be clear. What I'm really asking is how you feel. Until you have their attention, until they're ready to say, what do you want from me? I'm trying to tell you how I feel.
Right.
And then what you want to say to them with everything that you have and everything that you know, full version of who you are, I want you to understand that how you feel emotionally has everything to do with everything that's playing out in every other way. So when I say, how do you feel, I'm talking about how do you feel, usually. Are you happy? Are you high on life? Are you eager? Do you feel frisky? Do you feel robust? Do you feel happy about life? Are you worried about money? Are you worried about your kids? Are you fearful about something? Are you under a lot of stress? I want to know how you feel. Because how you feel, this is all we have to work with, say to them. How you feel is everything. I have to help you find a way of feeling better before the manifestations are better. You want me to just give you something that makes the symptoms of your emotional imbalance go away. I can't do that. No one can. Look what's going on. We are more technologically advanced, more medically advanced than ever before, and we are sicker as a people on this planet because we are not tending to what matters. I want to know how you feel, and that's what I want to help you with, you see.
Right.
Now, how does that feel to you?
Well, that feels totally
great
and accurate.
What would someone say back to you?
Taking them to that level?
Once they're there.
Well, that's a really nice intellectual construct, but how do I translate that into my physicality?
This is what.
Right.
So.
And I try to explain to them that, here we are, spiritual beings. We're spiritually and vibrationally induced, and chemically and electrically driven, and then biologically carried out. So
well, that's beautiful.
How do we get to the higher
Those are
level?
beautiful words, but you might consider something like this. Physicians, they were perfect words, and we would use every one of those. You might say to them that as a medical practitioner, I see a lot of people, and I know for sure. Nothing changes unless there is an emotional shift. And when there's emotional shift, everything changes, and everything changes for the better. And so, for years, this profession of mine, in an effort to categorize everything and pigeonhole everything, we've been missing the most important thing, which is you are an individual. You are a unique individual with unique desires and unique allowance of those desires. And only you can bring yourself into alignment, but I can help you. And we would just keep talking in those terms, in those confident, I know exactly what to do, I can lead you to where you want to be, I can show you exactly how to get there terms, until you hear from them how.
Right.
Until you hear from them, until you have evoked with them, in them. You see, if you've been listening to us for a while, you have to understand that that's what we do every single time. In other words, we're bringing you up to speed with what we know. This gathering, those listening, are, for the most part, up to speed with what we know. There isn't anyone listening that doesn't know that emotion is everything. Now, you might not know exactly what to do about it because you are wrapped up in the thoughts that are going on around you, but everyone who is listening is accepting that your emotions are the key, not just to your recovery, but to your robustness.
Right.
Not just to your recovery, but to your clarity, to your fun, to your joy, for your love of life, for your what would be the point of being in this magnificent body, in this perfect time-space reality, with the energy that creates worlds pouring through you, accessible to you, for the creation of whatever you want, if you don't feel good in your body? What's the point of any of it if you don't feel good, you see? And so it's really interesting that your physical apparatus is the vessel through which this energy flows. But the cells of your body are individually summoning. And if left to their own devices, you would thrive. So the biggest message that you want to get across to people is that if you'll stay out of the way, your body knows what to do.
Absolutely.
And talk to them from a medical standpoint that you can do everything in the world, but unless that wound, unless the cells of the body are cooperating, that wound is not going to heal. And it usually does. It's just amazing what the physical body is capable of doing.
But my question is the alignment part of me. I probably just block. That's my question: is how am I blocking the answers?
Well, blocking. This is. We've already had the conversation. Did you hear it?
Yes.
because that's like setting your radio dial to a station you don't want to hear and claiming that you're blocking the station you do want to hear. And we say, well, it's pretty obvious you're blocking it by not tuning to the frequency that you want to hear. So then the question is, well, how do I tune to the frequency? And the answer really is go general. So we'll demonstrate this together. So what is it? What answer are you looking for that feels blocked?
Okay. I'm an energy worker, and the energy I specifically like to use is called Reiki, but now that I've been doing it for so long, there's everybody else saying, well, this is this energy, and that's that energy, and this is this, and I feel at this point that it's all the same, right? There's not a specific, I do Reiki, I do whatever, this kind of, I mean, when I'm working with somebody energetically, it's just source, right?
It is source, and it is, when you're working with someone, they're already summoning the energy.
Right.
And so sometimes if it feels like the energy is blocked, it only means they've come to you because something is out of whack and they're wanting your influence to set it into a more allowing state. So, but when you say blocking, what specifically do you mean?
I guess trusting that that I trust my own answer, that I believe that when I'm opened up to channel any kind of energy work, that I believe that there isn't a difference anymore. I believe
Well, it doesn't matter what you call it, you
Yeah,
see. And when we
exactly.
talk about allowing, so let's say, as you often do, that you've meditated, and because you've been working with this energy for a while, you know what it feels like. You can feel when it's flowing. You can feel when it's flowing to you and through you, and you can feel when whoever you're working with is allowing it to flow further. In other words, you've had enough experience with this that you viscerally know what the feeling of energy flowing feels like, don't you?
Yes.
So, don't you?
Yes.
So when it feels like it's not flowing for whatever reason, rather than jumping to the conclusion that something is wrong, just remind yourself that that's what this whole process is about. It's about allowing the energy to flow, and trying to get energy to flow is counterproductive to allowing energy to flow. So when you're working with another person, there's more than you involved in this process. You can't allow for someone else. You can only allow the energy to flow, and then in your knowing of it, maybe you can influence them to allow it to flow. But what's interesting is that as you're questioning, now you're not allowing. So and you can feel that in the moment, and so then you just try harder. That's what we were teasing about. You begin affirming. Well, I'm an energy worker, and my energy is this different name of energy, and you're right, it doesn't matter what you call it, because Source is not delivering energy in categories.
Right. Exactly. But different frequencies, though. No.
Well, but the frequency is about the resistance or not. In other words, the higher the frequency, the less the resistance. The lower the frequency, the more the resistance. And so Source is always at a very high frequency. And when you tap into it, you receive it at your ability to receive it, you see. But you're not the only participant in this. So your greatest work when you're interacting with another, first of all, you're right on something really important. You cannot be in a state of self-doubt and be of any value to anyone else.
That I really want.
You just can't.
Well, how do you think those
So
desires
you
became
got to be
big?
tuned in. And so if we were standing in your physical shoes, before we began a process with anyone, we would recount to ourselves all of the lovely times that we are certain that energy has been flowing. And if you're not in a good state, don't try to flow it. In other words, this isn't something like a college degree that once you've got it is yours forevermore. It either is it or it isn't in the moment, you see. So the first thing we would be aware of is how we're feeling. And the better you feel, then the more value you have to someone else. But then the next thing is, where are they? Well, often they're not in that good of a place because they're dealing with some challenge that they're wanting you to help them with. So your magic for them, and of course it's not magic, is to not focus, don't let them help you get focused on where they are, because if they can convince you where they are, now they've muddied up your ability to help them. So the less you know about where they are, the more you can believe in the energy flowing, the better it is for them and for you see. So now, let's say that you're tuning in, you're allowing the energy to flow, and it doesn't feel like you want it to feel. Well, just stop and relax. Don't stop what you're doing, but focus for a moment and relax and acknowledge that there are more involved in this than just you, and that your role here is to softly influence their allowance. Because there's a tendency with energy workers, and it's why they argue over what to call it. Almost all believe that they're tapping into a source of energy and that they are shining it or projecting it or asserting it, and that just like a fire hose with enough pressure, they can blow out the resistance. And it isn't that way, because the more you try, the more it binds up. And so it really is about soft and gentle allowing. So your words are things like general words. General words. The more general you are in the words that you express, the more general you are. So you want to say things like, energy is really a nice thing because it knows what to do. And I don't have absolute knowledge about what's going on with this energy. I just feel it. And I know that we don't have to figure it out because it holds the intelligence, that my work is just to allow it to flow. And I'm sort of an open vortex that it easily flows to. I'm someone who can just make energy a little more accessible to people. But it's not my job. I'm not going to thrust it into you. I'm just offering it for you to softly receive. And sometimes you receive it easily and sometimes not so easily, but it's all okay because it's always better. It always helps. It always helps no matter what.
And that's kind of where I feel that I do, is that that's kind of where my problem is that I don't feel like I feel like people that they see, they're like, oh, I'm seeing this happen and that's happening and all that. I just kind of feel like I'm just opening up and whatever's happening is happening.
Well, here's the thing about
I don't always get a visual or anything.
Here's
like
the thing
that.
about that. We've been saying for a long while, that the greatest advantage that someone else can offer to someone with resistance is something that's very soft and general. Because if you're looking specifically at specific things that are out of whack, and you are shining specific energy on those specific things that are out of whack, the belief factor in the person makes the difference. In other words, if they believe that you have the power to focus and heal them specifically, then the more specific you are, then the more they would receive the wellness that you are focusing. But if they're not there, then the more specifically you focus, the more resistant they become about it. And that's why we say the general approach is often the best approach.
It's kind of like Esther is channeling Abraham. So she's able to get this, what's the word I'm trying to think of, but tell what they're thinking. She's getting this feeling and she's able to interpret it.
But you see, here's the
and that's
thing.
what I'm like,
But
don't have the interpretation thing.
But don't question yourself, because this is happening at an unconscious level with Esther. She's not watching the words pile up and then speaking them as they do. She's getting a block of thought which is at an unconscious level, and at an unconscious level she's finding the word equivalent. So the same thing is happening to you. You're getting a block of thought that you're translating through the energy that you're flowing. That's why this question follows so precisely on the question before, because the specifics of it don't matter. The specifics of it don't matter. This source energy is this all-knowing, all-powerful, general energy of well-being that you get to tap into at whatever level of readiness and allowingness that you are able. And don't second guess yourself. Don't try to interpret it into something more precise than it is valuable to be. You get what we're saying? In other words, if it was of value for you to precisely see something and precisely go after it, you would. But because it's of less value, it's of more value for you to know well-being. And you see, here's the best way to look at this. Every single person who is wanting an energy balancing, whether it's because their physical apparatus is out of whack, or they're emotionally out of whack, or they, for whatever reason that they're calling for it, every single one of them has been living contrast and has identified what isn't wanted and has put into the vortex what is wanted. And because they've had that sifting process, they have a robust vortex that is summoning to them all the time. So Source is on the case. Source is on the case. Well, if Source can't buck their resistant current, why do you think you should?
Right, I see.
So what you are for them is someone who is tangible, seeable, hearable, tasteable, touchable, smellable. Here you are as someone right there, vivid, who is in alignment with Source, who is providing this gentle, general energy of well-being that doesn't challenge the specifics that they're all balled up about.
Okay.
You see what we're getting?
That helps so much. Yeah.
So you just be that and use words if they feel like, as they occur to you, but just know that that is the best that anyone can do for anyone. That's the best that anyone can do for anyone. When you believe in someone's well-being, you are of enormous value to them. And if you don't, stay away from them.
One more question. This question is just something I've always wondered. When you speak about when we pass, we go into bliss, and then we become source. So is source like the ocean? Is it like you go in, like when you want to talk with someone who passed?
No.
Is it like you just
No.
scoop up?
No.
Okay, good. It's just
No.
okay.
Source is focused in you when you're happy. Source is not a nebulousness, just waiting for something uninteresting to happen. Source, you are the leading edge of source. This is something that we so want you to hear. You, at your best, are source. Hard to hear. Hard to hear.
So, I hate to argue with those two gentlemen, but Noam Chomsky was a structural linguist. And his greatest contribution was his understanding of how the human mind acquires language. And he certainly has made a contribution in the political arena, but he made this amazing contribution in his trying to understand how we learn language. He would never say learning, how we acquire language that changed generations of people's opportunities. And so I think that's pretty amazing.
Language in and of itself is an interesting thing, because it's interesting how this name has come up 3 times and 3 rather different perspectives, defining it 3 very different ways. And you should hear what he's saying now.
I once had a cat named Noam Chomsky, named for the linguist, who was really badly cross-eyed and ran into a lot of things because he was preoccupied with his deep structures. He was a really good cat. So this wonderful opportunity has presented itself in my life, and it's a chance to lay out a grid in a way that I think I have asked for forever. And probably like many people in this room, when the actual opportunity to lay out the grid differently and to, it's not about the manifestation exactly. It's about creating the energy framework in which certain kinds of things that I value really deeply can occur with and for other people. And what I would like to ask Abraham and Jerry, because he always gave me the best linear answers ever, is what are the steps that we go through in laying out an energetic grid for ourselves that's meant to be a container, a field?
Well, it's easier than you know, because the piece that you forget, and everybody does to some degree, but hardworking people are the ones who forget it most often. And that is, do I want to do it? Does it feel fun? In other words, how does it feel in terms of my personal, is it something I want to do? Not something I should do, not something that needs to be done. Is it something I want to do? Does it make me, does my heart sing in the idea of the beginning steps? And if the answer to that is, I don't know, then it's too soon. Or if the answer is, no, I'm doing it because I should, then...
That's a great question. That's perfect. I know what I want, which is the feeling of the hands in the clay. It is the feeling of communication. It is the feeling of unfolding. It is the feeling of the flow. It is the feeling of being with. It is the feeling of participating together in an expansion that's more than either of us.
You know those games you play where you say, which thing here doesn't fit? The kids play the games. All the things in the picture and what thing doesn't fit. Communication was the thing that didn't fit in there. Because everything else was about feeling, but the communication is in the trying to explain it.
Not necessarily. When I think about communication, that's not what I think about. I think about partnership. I think about receiver and transmitter. I think about transaction.
Did it mean words?
Doesn't have to be words. It's the feeling of it. So the question. So I know what I want, and what I don't know is, can I intentionally do work? I don't have another word for this. Can I take this opportunity and turn it into the things that I just am clear I want?
Will this opportunity turn into what I want?
Can I co-create with this opportunity for it to feel the way I want it to feel?
But feel the difference in what we're guiding here, because as you identify the establishing of a vibrational grid, doesn't it fill itself in? Do you have to turn it into something? And if you have the feeling that you're going to have to do some of the turning it into something, then your grid isn't where you think it is or where you want it to be quite yet.
That's okay. So this is the question about the grid. Is
You
that...
understand what we're saying about the grid? In other words, it's the grid, it's that going general, going general, going general. The grid is knowing how I want to feel. I know how I want to feel. I don't know how I'm going to do it or when it's going to come or where it's going to come from or who's going to bring it, but I know how I want to feel when it gets there. I don't even need to define what gets there. I just know it's because I want to, in other words, I want to be of value. I want to be of assistance. I want people to find resolution in their interaction with me. I want it to be meaningful. I want it to be big. I want it to represent the bigness of what I've been working toward. I want it to be understood. I want it to be well received. I want it to feel comfortable as that unfolds. Those are feelings, and they are general, and that's the grid. And so when you use anything you can to stimulate those feelings within you, rather than trying to work on the project or even identify if this opportunity is the right one, just feel around that and keep amplifying within yourself how you want to feel, then the unfolding occurs and you recognize it when it comes. It's the difference between allowing it and banging it into place.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. So, oh, wow. That's hard for a hardworking person to let go of.
Really hard. Really hard. And there are those who would say it's your ego is the problem. but we're talking about your focus being, but it's this is the subtle difference that we're all reaching to define. And it's that if you believe that you are a creator and that the way you create is by achieving a vibration that law of attraction responds to, then shouldn't every effort that you offer, hardworking person that you are, or shouldn't the majority of the effort that you offer be about producing the emotion or the feeling and trusting that the rest will fill in, because it will. This is the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart thing that we talk about with most people. Most people say, I want to feel a certain way, and I think that avenue will get me there. So they focus on that avenue, and then they get sidetracked. Where if they would focus on how they want to feel, a myriad of avenues would show themselves to them to get there. There is not an opportunity. There are opportunities
everywhere around us. So I want to ask this question about aging. Is it just the habit of vibration and the habit of resistance that is what we experience as aging?
And intention from non-physical, in other words, wanting exposure to, in the same way that you brilliantly brought yet a third perspective to the name that had already been offered. every phase of your life brings another perspective that adds a richness to the. And if you remained the same, that richness would not happen. It's varied perspective that adds to the richness of the whole, because from the source level, the grid is really well known.
I can feel it.
And
I can feel it.
And it can be filled in lots of different stages of life experience.
So the attractive thing about this opportunity is it feels like it can be a new life stage. It can be, the ninth life, and I only thought there were going to be 3, so this has turned out really well, and really scary, and really wonderful. And
well, it's some of those things, but some of that doesn't fit in the picture. In other words,
well, the scariest part is confronting the closets to move. If you know what I mean. Remember Esther and her closets full of stuff. It has the feeling of excitement that I take as an indicator of, yeah, it's a good thing to do. It has the feeling of openness.
We have said to people at less evolved places in the creative discussion, play it out in your mind both ways and see which feels better. Make a decision to do it and live with that for 2 or 3 days and see how it feels. Make a decision not to do it and play it out for 3 or 4 days. But that was before we had the profound discussion about the vibrational emotional grid. In other words, you have enough knowledge about how you want to feel and why you want to feel the way you want to feel, that if you'll just sit tight for a little while, the answer will express itself to you in undeniable terms. And anytime you feel like you need to figure it out, you're pushing something. And what you're always pushing, you're pushing the action part, the deciding part, rather than ramping up or shoring up the vibrational part. So we're not talking about a long period of time. We're just saying focus upon how you want to feel and why you want to feel that way. What are the best feeling parts of it? And just live with them and practice them and resonate with them and get them dominant in your vibration, and then watch the universe fill in the details that in their absence make you feel afraid. In their presence, you will feel sure and determined. It is.
So I think about Jerry all the time. He was a really important person in my life. I didn't know him that well, but so powerful that lots of times, not as often as Esther, but I get the Jerry perspective on something so clearly, with a level of laughter that I never really heard him do except occasionally. But I'm just here to say he's having a really good time.
Best ever. He said to Esther was sitting and looking at the chair where he sat, feeling sorry for herself that he was not sitting there. And he said, I'm really having a good time. 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 He's really having a good time.